This is a story about Jim Jones and how a man who preached racial equality and social justice led over 900 people to their deaths in the jungles of Guyana. The Jonestown Massacre stands as the largest mass murder-suicide in modern history. 304 of those who died were children. The question that haunts investigators decades later isn't just how it happened, but how so many people followed him there willingly. James Warren Jones was born in 1931 in rural Indiana during the Great Depression. His childhood was marked by poverty and a deeply troubled home life. His father was a disabled World War I veteran with Ku Klux Klan sympathies. His mother worked long hours to support the family. Young Jim spent much of his childhood alone, developing an intense fascination with religion and death. Neighbors remembered him conducting funeral services for dead animals, practicing sermons to anyone who would listen. By his teenage years, Jones was studying different religions obsessively, drawn to the power preachers held over their congregations. In 1955, at age 24, Jones founded what would become the People's Temple in Indianapolis. Unlike most churches in the segregated 1950s, Jones welcomed black and white worshipers equally. He preached racial integration and social justice, radical messages that attracted idealistic followers. Jones and his wife Marceline adopted several children of different races, creating what he called a rainbow family to demonstrate his commitment to equality. His church ran soup kitchens, helped people find jobs, and provided real community support. To many, Jim Jones seemed like a prophet of progressive change. But here's what nobody knew. Behind the inspiring sermons and charitable work, Jones was already displaying troubling behavior. He faked healings during services, planting members in the audience who would pretend to be cured of cancer or stand up from wheelchairs. He demanded absolute loyalty from his followers. Those who questioned him faced public humiliation during services. Jones was also becoming increasingly paranoid, convinced that nuclear war was imminent and that government forces were targeting him. In 1965, Jones moved the People's Temple to Northern California, eventually settling in San Francisco. The church grew rapidly during the 1970s. Jones cultivated relationships with politicians, including San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and California Lieutenant Governor Meredith Flinch. He delivered votes and volunteers for political campaigns. In exchange, politicians praised him publicly, giving him legitimacy and protection from scrutiny. At its peak, the People's Temple had thousands of members, most of them poor, many of them black, families seeking community and hope. Behind closed doors, Jones's control over his followers was becoming absolute. Members were required to sign over their property and possessions to the church. Jones called these loyalty tests. He forced members to confess supposed sins in front of the congregation. Punishments became increasingly severe. Children were beaten for minor infractions. Sexual abuse began, with Jones claiming he needed to have sex with both male and female followers to fulfill his spiritual mission. Anyone who tried to leave faced threats. Jones kept detailed files on members' secrets, information he would use to keep them trapped. By the mid-1970s, former members were beginning to speak out. Deborah Layton, who would later escape Jonestown, described how Jones used fear and exhaustion to control people. Members worked long hours for the church, attending mandatory meetings that lasted until 3 or 4 in the morning. Sleep deprivation made them easier to control. Jones also began staging fake attacks on the church, telling members they were under siege, that the government was coming for them. These white nights created constant crisis and paranoia. In 1977, as media scrutiny increased, Jones made his boldest move. He relocated nearly 1,000 followers to a remote settlement in the South American nation of Guyana. He called it Jonestown, promising it would be a socialist paradise free from American racism and capitalism. Families sold everything they owned to make the journey. They believed they were building utopia in the jungle. The reality of Jonestown was hell. Armed guards patrolled the compound's perimeter. Members worked in the fields from dawn until dark in brutal tropical heat. Food was scarce, usually just rice and gravy, while Jones ate separately with choice cuts of meat. Loudspeakers blared Jones's voice day and night, sometimes for 16 hours straight. He rambled about conspiracies, about enemies surrounding them, about the beauty of revolutionary suicide. There was no leaving. The Guyanese jungle surrounded them, and Jones made it clear that anyone who tried to escape would be hunted down. Here's what nobody's talking about. Survivors later revealed that Jones was addicted to drugs, including amphetamines and barbiturates. His paranoia spiraled completely out of control. He believed the CIA was targeting him. He thought nuclear war had already started. His sermons became increasingly incoherent and threatening. He conducted suicide drills, forcing members to drink what he said was poison as a loyalty test. Those who refused or hesitated were severely punished. Jones was preparing his followers for the real thing. In November 1978, California Congressman Leo Ryan flew to Guyana to investigate reports that people were being held against their will in Jonestown. Ryan's delegation included journalists and concerned relatives of temple members. Jones initially welcomed them, staging performances to show how happy everyone was. But on November 17th, as Ryan prepared to leave, several members approached him begging for help to escape. Ryan agreed to take them. The next day, November 18th, 1978, as Ryan's group prepared to board planes at a nearby airstrip, temple gunmen opened fire. Congressman Ryan, 3 journalists, and 1 defector were murdered. Others were wounded. Back at Jonestown, Jones knew the end had come. Authorities would descend on the compound within hours. Jones gathered everyone in the main pavilion. A tape recorder captured his final speech. His voice was calm, almost casual, as he told his followers it was time for revolutionary suicide. He said enemies were coming to torture their children, that death was the only escape. Some followers spoke up in agreement, their voices recorded alongside the sounds of people crying and children screaming. Others argued, begging Jones to find another way. Jones was insistent. He had prepared for this moment. Large vats of grape flavor aid mixed with cyanide, tranquilizers, and sedatives had been prepared. Parents were told to bring their children. Forward first. Babies and small children had the poison squirted into their mouths with syringes. They died within minutes, convulsing and foaming at the mouth as their parents were forced to watch. Then adults lined up to drink. Some went willingly, believing in Jones's vision of revolutionary suicide. Others were forced at gunpoint by armed guards. People who tried to run were shot. The entire massacre took less than an hour. When Guyanese authorities reached Jonestown the next day, they found 9 to 18 bodies. The dead lay in clusters, families holding each other. Children were in their parents' arms. The scene was incomprehensible. Jim Jones was found dead with a single gunshot wound to the head. Whether he shot himself or was shot by one of his closest aides remains unknown. He died wearing his signature dark sunglasses. The aftermath revealed the full scope of the horror. Among the dead were 304 children, including infants. Entire families were wiped out. Many had been U.S. citizens, drawn to People's Temple's message of equality and social justice, never imagining where it would lead. Deborah Layton, who had escaped months earlier and tried to warn authorities, survived to tell the story. Her warnings had been dismissed. The Jonestown Massacre exposed catastrophic failures. Politicians who had embraced Jones faced questions about why they hadn't investigated earlier warning signs. The media examined how a cult could grow so large and dangerous in plain sight. Families of victims struggled to understand how their loved ones had been manipulated so completely. The psychological mechanisms of coercive control became subjects of intense study. What does this say about the human need for belonging, for purpose, for leaders who promise simple answers to complex problems? Jim Jones understood that need and weaponized it. He took people's desire for justice and community and twisted it into absolute control. The children who died in Jonestown had no choice. They were victims of adults who had themselves become victims, unable to see the danger until it was too late. The question remains, how do we prevent the next Jonestown when the warning signs are there for anyone willing to see them?